Good afternoon, all. Thanks for joining us. I'm Jen Jordan, and I lead content and thought leadership at Insight Partners. I also organize the Scale Up AI conference coming up on November 12th, which features keynotes from Ali K. Miller and Andrew Ng. As a preview to this amazing event, I'm excited to introduce this fireside discussion with SingleStore Chief Innovation Officer Rahul Rastogi and Insight Partners Managing Director Lonne Jaffe. During our session today, we're pleased to offer you 35% off a virtual ticket for Scale Up AI. The code and website will appear right here below during the chat. With that, please welcome our speakers to the stage. Over to you, Lonne.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Scale Up AI Soundbites. So I'm Lonne Jaffe, Managing Director at Insight Partners, and today we're spotlighting the data infrastructure software company SingleStore. I first came across SingleStore back when I was CEO of another Insight Partners data infrastructure portfolio company called SingStore. And then almost exactly 4 years ago, led the Series E investment into the company and joined the board. And we've made a bunch of additional investments into SingleStore since then, as they've been scaling quickly. And I'm excited today to have Rahul Rastogi, the Chief Innovation Officer at SingleStore, here with us today. We'll be diving into things like what SingleStore is, some fun topics like how SingleStore is particularly differentiated for runtime analytical applications that need to be really fast, all the different kinds of database workloads SingleStore can run, including things like vector similarity search and retrieval augmented generation for AI applications, what the company's working on in the future as it continues to push the envelope in data and AI technology. So Rahul, thanks for joining us today. Let's get into it.
Thank you, Lonne.
Okay, so before we dive into the tech, maybe you can give us a quick intro about your very interesting professional background and journey in the tech space, including how you ended up joining SingleStore.
Oh, sure thing. Yeah. So I think, thank you so much for having me at this event. It's absolutely an honor to be here. As you've probably seen in my LinkedIn, I recently joined SingleStore as the Chief Innovation Officer. And my role actually spans both internal and external focuses. With externally, I collaborate very closely with our, incredible customer base who are absolutely passionate about our product and work with them to help drive innovation. Internally, I work alongside with our product engineering and field teams, to enhance and evolve our product offering. Now, how I came about joining SingleStore is sort of interesting. I used to be a big fan of SingleStore in my previous role. Okay, so let me tell you a little bit about that. I've been in this industry for almost 34 years. I'm sort of dating myself. I've witnessed a lot of transformations throughout my career. From early days of client server applications to Y2K to dot-com boom, and then this massive explosion of big data and analytics. I actually began my career as an application engineer, developing transaction applications for banking, public sector, and various industries. My last stint was at Apple. It was a very fulfilling career where I focused on reporting, analytics, data warehousing, data services, data platforms for Apple's global operations. And I did that for good, 22 years. One of the main missions at Apple was how do we democratize data and how do we empower our business teams to use data to drive business decision? How do we foster more self-service? How do we simplify the data landscape and data environment for them? And this was actually achieved through a concept we lived, by at Apple. It was called Concept of One. That means, let's make sure we do automation and frameworking. So, for example, we had one unified framework for all data management for ETL, one API-driven framework for data consumption, best-in-class BI tools, a virtual integrated enterprise data warehouse that we built using, S3, Snowflake, and obviously SingleStore. Okay, so a lot of technologies, that propelled and fueled the data ecosystem at Apple. Exposed me to some great technologies, from early years of likes of BW from SAP, Teradata, and Hadoop, and then more recently, with Snowflake and SingleStore. So it has been a fun and fulfilling journey. I learned a lot along the way. And as over the past few years, as we were modernizing the whole data ecosystem for Apple, I came across Snowflake and SingleStore. Both these technologies are super powerful, and that's what drew me towards SingleStore. So here I am.
That's great. And so SingleStore's reputation is for being able to unify both transactional and analytical workloads.
Mm-hmm.
And now, I guess, both SQL and NoSQL workloads with the MongoDB API compatibility. And yet most database people are taught that you're never supposed to run analytics on a transactional system. And if you run transactions on an analytical system, it'll be too slow. So wanted to get your thoughts on, like, how does SingleStore break that seemingly fundamental trade-off and deliver real-time analytics without sacrificing transactional performance on the same system? Can you break down a little bit of like what makes the SingleStore architecture special and so differentiated?
Oh, absolutely. Great question. And I think, I think if you ask this question of me, like maybe 7 years ago, I was in the same camp, that analytics systems should be different from transactional systems. You can't have workloads coexist, because, they will just compete with each other and starve each other of resources. But my thinking has changed, dramatically, I would say, in past, several years. So coming to SingleStore, SingleStore, as you know, it's an in-memory database. It's a distributed SQL database that is designed for horizontal scalability. Like any other MPP system, data is distributed across multiple nodes, which enables efficient scaling. So that's not where the magic is. Yes, we do it well, and I think I'm sure many other vendors also do something similar. But we have been a leader in supporting both, row-based and columnar data storage. The SingleStore engine is designed, to read, write, scan large data sets, aggregate large data sets in milliseconds, and that is due to several, innovations and technological innovations that we have in the product. So let me share some examples, okay, so that you get a flavor of it. So first and foremost is, data. How so we actually have a phenomenal data compression scheme. We compress data up to 60%, which really allows us to access, data, large volumes of data very, very quickly. And another important thing is, when the way we manage data, we have a very seamless way of transitioning data from memory to disks and to object store. That really allows us to cater to, some transactional workloads, as well as, deep, gnarly analytical workloads. I would say the second thing is in-memory processing. I think we really take pride in how we manage data in memory, and this really ensures low latency querying. We have some patented technologies like skip list indexing, IVF-based indexing, that really facilitates, very, very efficient data retrieval. Can't say enough. As a customer, I recognized it. I think the optimizer is very, very sophisticated, and I think, in a database, I would say the heart of the database is the optimizer. Okay, and so we have a phenomenal optimizer that really uses parallel computing to maintain transactional performance. Whether it is for a lookup or a tactical query, or a simple transactional query, or a join based, where you're trying to join multiple tables. It is really able to handle those things extremely, extremely well. Fast, data ingestion actually, is sometimes overlooked. Okay, but that's where I think we have spent a phenomenal amount of time in really optimizing the data ingestion. We ingest data parallelly. Okay, like you would expect from any MPP database. But the difference is we actually commit the data in memory, and because we commit the data in memory, okay, that's what allows us to read the data in milliseconds. And in several of our customers, we have actually seen that the reads are in single digit milliseconds, which is just phenomenal, which is actually the characteristic that you would expect from a true real-time database that can do transactions as well as analytics. And I would say last but not the least, something to call out is, we have been really, focused on scaling, and we have done it through a separation of compute and storage. Okay, and because we're able to separate compute and storage, obviously we can scale to petabytes. Okay, we are able to handle very, very high concurrency and low latency, and can support really real time use cases. So our philosophy is speed, scale, simplicity. Let's stay true to these principles at all times, and this is what actually makes single store, in my opinion, the best edge tab database on cloud today.
Yeah, it's my mental model is best in class for analytical runtime systems, and that includes analytical applications that are interactive, right? Not just the read-only systems. And then the idea that you can run transactional systems and NoSQL workloads and do the extremely high volume ingest, which will get upgraded even more with the recent acquisition. Those kinds of things can mean that you're just not shipping data around as much either, right? Like you don't have to. You're not constantly scaling it around him.
Yeah, absolutely spot on. And I think, and I know, transactional is, we want to be able to, as transactions are getting created, we want to be able to ingest the data. Now, transactions by itself are interesting, but when you look at transactions in relation to, the analytical models that you've built, or these interesting, integrated data structures you have built, and you use them together in a way in which it can drive decisions, and it can drive, for example, if somebody wants to do a fraud check, or if somebody wants to, enforce, global trade compliance rules, okay, or somebody wants to do, manage inventory, depending on what the velocity of orders is, you're able to do that in a single place versus collecting transactions in one place and shipping them to somewhere else, and then doing aggregations. And so again, time lost in taking decisions, I think, can cost tremendous amount of money to our customers, and that's the problem that we feel we are the best people to solve it.
Yeah, I've had a kind of core thesis for a while that we're going to see an increasing number of runtime analytical applications, which is kind of not really borne out yet much, other than maybe some of the new generative AI things we've been seeing, in the sense of like, the traditional way of building analytical applications is you do a batch job and you say produce the LinkedIn people you may know over the weekend. So when you sign on, it looks like it's being presented to you in real time, but actually it was from a few days ago.
Exactly.
But the reason why people didn't build runtime analytical applications was not because they didn't want to, but because SingleStore didn't exist.
I agree. And again, I think, again, we used to sort of joke around that who wants to read yesterday's newspaper? Okay, the news is old. Okay, we want information to be available more real time at the fingertips of our decision makers.
So we've been hearing a lot about vector similarity search, and that seems to be becoming an important piece in the puzzle for AI applications, especially when you're dealing with larger companies working with existing corporate data sets. We've seen a number of, I'll call them single-purpose vector search databases that have emerged that allow you to do, like, let's say you're typing in a prompt, you type in the prompt, and it takes the prompt, turns it into vectors, then compares those vectors to data in the single-purpose vector database, and then finds some existing corporate data to staple to the prompt, and then sends that all into the foundation model, and then gets the response. And you can it's a way of like teaching the model things that it doesn't already know in its large parameter set. And then we've seen, so SingleStore, though, also launched its own vector similarity search layer. And intuitively, it feels like, well, that's pretty interesting, right? Because like now you have a vector layer on a database that already has all of your data in it and is really good at high availability and dynamic elasticity and auto scaling, and has parallel ingest and can do analytics and transactions in the same system, and you can do the prompt and you can get the vector search to happen and bring in the additional context, and then when you retrieve the results, you can then maybe reattach it to data in the database and get sortable lists and things like that. But curious to just get your thoughts on the vector similarity search layer and how SingleStore is thinking about
I think again, this area is getting a lot of attention. Lonnie, as you rightfully said. But what probably people don't know, this whole vector thing, sort of, was first published in, way back in 2017. There was some groundbreaking paper on transformer architecture. Attention is all you need. And that was a time when actually SingleStore, supported vector operations and real-time semantic search. Okay, for past 5 years or so, several of our customers are using SingleStore for production level semantic search. Now you're absolutely right. With this rise of Gen AI, generative AI applications, in last, I would say 18 months or so, customers have started deploying these, RAG-based applications. Again, RAG, it's just a technique to provide more context to LLMs. Okay, from private and custom data. But what is different with SingleStore? Because vectors are something that are natively supported as first-class citizens. We have great technology that allows you to provide context to LLMs using structured data, which is really high value data. Okay, this could be your transactions, it could be your analytical models, it could be your aggregated structures, your integrated structures, where you're relating bunch of subject areas into one, as well as unstructured data, and which actually significantly not only improves the accuracy of the model but also prepares it to take an action. Okay, so today, a SingleStore, if I were to summarize, we support obviously hybrid search against with both structured and unstructured data. As I mentioned previously, we treat vectors as native first class citizens within SingleStore. But the difference is, when customers perform vector search, they're able to perform it alongside with analytics and transaction queries. Okay, and what I mean by that is, customers can write a single SQL query against structured data, vector, and exact search. Okay, they can write a single SQL statement against all three of them and take advantage of other SQL, semantics like join. You can join tables, you can filter the data, you can sort the data, and all this you're able to achieve while maintaining the same query performance. Again, SingleStore is about speed. So you're able to do these complex operations in a single SQL, okay, across these various things, okay, and get that performance out of it. Now, why is this important? Okay, this actually, think about it from a customer's point of view, this really simplifies how you build an AI application. It reduces complexity. No longer customers have to go across, hey, let me go and run a query in a transaction database. Now I need to go into my, reporting or analytics database. Oh, I need to do something from my caching. Okay, now I need to go and do something from vector. And then you get all this data and then you're sort of, collating this data somewhere else. Okay. And this is where we feel that with SingleStore, because we are able to do everything in a single place, okay, customers don't have to manage multiple technologies. Okay, it obviously makes them more agile. Okay, you can put your controls and governance on data management, data controls, data quality checks, etc. And effectively, it leads to a lower total cost of ownership. Okay, so I think that's the value proposition. And just building a little bit more upon just getting into on the vector side, as I said, we support structured, structured, unstructured. Now the vector, we also, the engine supports both KNN and ANN searches. Okay, which is again something that was added, I would say maybe like 10 or 12 months ago. We have done a lot of work on vector indices. Okay, like inverted vector index, product quantization, HNSW. And the beauty is, customers can actually define multiple indices on the same data. Now, why would you define that? You can define, because not every use case is created equal. Okay. Now, if you define multiple indices on the same data type, and depending on what the use case is, the applications can leverage different index type to suit their needs. So this is an exciting space, and I feel that we are certainly leading the path here. Okay, but again, we are not sitting still. Certainly an area of constant investments and focus for all of us.
Yeah, it's interesting. We we have a number of internal use cases. One is that we already gather a lot of information about all our investment prospects and existing portfolio companies into various packaged application tools like CRM and internal tracking systems. And then we pull that out into a database. And in theory, we could have already written basically SQL queries to get access to questions that we might want to ask about the data, like which of my portfolio companies had the most net new ARR last quarter sorted by gross margin or something like that. But we built an LLM-based tool that just sits in our regular chat system, and you can just ask it that question. And then it generates SQL from the question that it then can pull from the data. You can do a vector similarity search and then send it to a language model and then get the SQL and then send that as a structured query to the data warehouse. And then so it can pull like information about the schema and include that in what's sent to the model to produce the SQL. And then it sends the SQL to the database in order to pull the response. And then it can reattach the response to the data in the database so that you can like click into it and sort and pivot table and things like that. And that feels like one of the sort of natural use cases for something like the new vector layer on SingleStore.
Absolutely. I certainly feel, I think, that over the next, few years, we will see a lot more, conversational, conversations with the data type of applications emerge. Okay. And for those applications, certainly providing context, semantic meaning, synonyms, teaching models more about, customer data model. Those are going to become more important, and certainly they will all require, this sort of a integrated, platform like SingleStore, where you have transactions and analytics and vectors all in one place, where you're able to, once you're able to provide the context, generate, SQLs that and simple SQLs that can go against these various types of, data structures and can return responses. I certainly see, that is not that far off.
Yeah. In the last few minutes we have, maybe we can talk a little bit about AI features for SingleStore. I'm thinking things like the notebook capability and the SQL generation functionality, or maybe even the new Snowflake partnership that was just announced with an exciting new billboard on the 101. What
you
kinds
like
of innovations? Yeah. What should we be thinking about as we look forward to the next year or so that SingleStore has got in the labs from an AI perspective?
Yeah, I think, great question again, Lonnie. Again, this is one space that is not sitting still. I think, we are seeing, new things emerge every day. Just recently you saw some announcements from Anthropic and OpenAI, and they are supporting real-time AI agentic applications. So certainly,
I like
these
O1 and the new computer use capabilities from Anthropic. Yes.
Exactly, and these are sort of music to our ears, because everything that we've been doing, and will continue to do, sort of aligned with where the industry is heading. Okay. But I believe, and when I say I think obviously I'm representing everybody at SingleStore, that we believe that, the next generation of AI applications will be very data intensive. Okay. Data is what is going to fuel the AI applications. They're going to demand speed. Okay. When I say speed, it is not just for the ingestion of data, but also how quickly you're able to, access the data. Okay. It has to be scalable. That means the concurrency would be, at Uber scale. Yes, we are very proud that we are able to handle hundreds and thousands of customers, but can you imagine if you have an agentic applications running against databases? We could have thousands and tens of thousands of agents running against it. Okay, so scalability would be key. Okay, so what we are doing is we are actually really doubling down, and we are strengthening the core of our database. Okay, I mean, it is phenomenal, it is very, very strong, but we feel that we just can't stand still. Okay, we have to make our database more feature rich. Okay, we have to make it more scalable, and so that we uphold to our commitment to speed. Okay, the The data ecosystem is also a big area of focus. We have Single Connect, something that we announced, earlier on. It is designed to source data from wide range of sources. But we recently made an acquisition, and that actually further enhances our ability to get data from new sources, new databases, SaaS applications. Because as I said, we are probably one of the few, or maybe the only database that can actually host, can bring structured, unstructured, and vector in one place. And when all this is there in one place, then access, allowing customers to use simple grammar like SQL to generate, to develop agentic applications or GenAI applications would be very, very powerful. But then there are few other areas where we feel AI is going to play a huge role. For example, we want to use AI within the database itself. Okay. uh, so that our customers can manage and operate the database more efficiently. And you alluded to SQL generation. Why not? Can people come and ask a natural language question, okay, and that actually generates a SQL? Now, yeah, it may not be perfect, out the gate, but as we learn more about the use cases and the access patterns, we can further refine it. you know Query optimization, again, no matter how great the database is, query optimization is required. Okay, so can we use AI to drive query optimization? Can we make it easier for people to operationally manage the database? Okay, so those are areas that we feel we'll continue to look at, invest. Okay, but we feel that we are starting off from a great position of strength, and we just have to continue to build upon that.
Well, that's great. I think it's a good place to wrap it up for today's episode of Scale Up Soundbites. Huge thanks to Rahul for joining us today and giving us a look behind the scenes at what SingleStore is building in AI. And thanks everyone for tuning in.